Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? It's Friday. We made it through another week, ladies and gentlemen. And man, 2021 is a doozy already. We're still in January, and the shenanigans are at an all-time high. But enough of that. Well, actually, no. Continuing the shenanigans, we have two individuals here who are going to continue in which now is a two-part series on a commentary on the Alan Parr video. And of course, we have CMB, the ambassador. What's going on, sir?
What's good, party people in the place to be? I am CMB. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir. You, of course, repping from Yard as always. You know what I mean?
Nah, not from Yard. 4 Yard.
4 Yard.
4 Yard, not
It's
from
4
Yard.
Yard, not
That's
from
right.
Yard.
I'm from Yard.
My bad. And the other individual who is correcting me on my patois is EJ Thunder Lauriston. What's going on, sir?
Yes, sir. Right here, man. Glad to be back here.
And he also reps 4 Yard and also,
Yes, sir.
you know what I mean, waving it proud. You know what I mean? So we've been having a discussion on the Alan Parr video with Justin Cole. And before we continue in our commentary, what's been the response to the first video?
Go ahead, bro. Yeah.
Oh, sure, no problem. It's been good for the most part, especially from evangelical Christians, and what I mean by that is Christians who are not Adventists, Christians among various denominations. It's been good, but Adventists will be Adventists. We still cannot understand Adventism. We can't articulate what they believe and teach. We are misrepresenting them, and all of that usual stuff. I mean, it's not surprising, but a lot of persons have been seeing expressing their appreciation for us doing it, and they've been learning a lot by what we are doing.
Cool. And what about you, CMB? What have you been noticing?
Pretty much the same. It's been interesting because, and I'm not doing what. Look, to be fair, we wanted people to see the response because it needs to happen, right? The thing of it is, though, we're not gonna be salacious or anything like that. We're trying to make it as much of an honest response as we can, based on the scriptures and our perception of things, right? And for the amount of people that have said things, only a few have said things that were sort of negative, So I think that can be a testament of maybe we're doing something right as far as we're being honest with that kind of thing. And that's honestly where our hearts are at. It's never been about the destruction of people, right? It's doctrine. Okay. And we say this all the time in the bodega. If you ever watch Bodega Friday nights, Bodega Bible Talk, shout out to everybody there. But if you ever watch that, we're not really trying to get at people's personal issues. We're trying to get at bad doctrine, and that's always the case. And so far so good. We're getting into the meat of the matter on this part here, so we'll see how it goes.
Cool. So I guess with that being said, we can just dive right in.
Yeah.
At the 54 minute mark, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So
can I set it up first? If that's cool.
Yeah. As I set it up, you can set it up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if in the last episode, for the last thing that we talked about was the kind of the inadvertent trap that Alan kind of set himself up for. He said he was personally offended by the doctrines that I said I can love God, I can serve people, I can do all this kind of stuff. And then you feel like if I don't keep the Sabbath, then I'm going to go to hell. I find that personally offensive. And I think we kind of talked over the proof texting that some folks do about that stuff that will say something like, okay, well, didn't Jesus say, did you cast out demons in my name? And did you do this in my name and that my name? I never knew you. And that's kind of how people will see this. So it's not a matter of personal offense so much as it is about truth. People can say whatever they want to say, in some circles, and some, to be honest with you, I deserve some of the reputation that I've had back in the day. I was wild, and so some people could tell you some horrible stories about me, but I mean, that was then, and I have an opportunity to grow or not grow, or whatever the case is, and glory be to God, I'm not who I was before. And with that said, there can be personal offense taken, or whatever the case is. That doesn't need to be the case. There's no need for personal offense. Let's stick with the scriptures, and that way the narrative doesn't shift, right? And we're going to see that again in multiple different ways, how the narrative tends to shift in the conversation. So that's kind of the setup here, if you're with us from last week. So kind of come through, and what's up to everybody in the chat?
All right, cool. So I can start playing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
6 days of the week, and then because of this one issue, I'm not a Christian.
Right.
And yeah, that really rubbed me the wrong way.
I hear where you're coming from, and like if that's how it was presented to me, 100% major issues with it. I'm on the same page with you on that. When I hear you talk about all the criticisms that you have of Adventism, my first response really is like, yeah, there's a grain of truth in that, and it might even be larger than a grain. Like there's a whole bunch of truth in what Alan is saying. And so part of me is like, I'm really grateful for the videos that you create, because you highlighting these problem areas are actually some of the work that me and some of my closest friends, and whether they're pastors or lay people in our church, are all trying to work on, saying, yeah, we see this too. We see the maybe heavy emphasis on works as opposed to the finished work of Jesus. Like we see that, and we're working towards correcting and steering this giant body of people. So I'm there with you on that. But at the same point, it also highlights that for every one person that is like this, there might be several other people who that's not how they see Adventism. That's not the way that they view the relationship to, say, the Sabbath, who would say, no, Alan, I do have security of salvation, that it is a finished work accomplished by Jesus and him alone. And so all that to say is that watching the videos was troubling and comforting all at the same time. Comforting because you're hitting on all the things that I care about as well, that I want to see growth in my denomination, but also troubling in the sense that, well, you're only seeing the glass half full. I don't know. I don't even like that analogy. You're seeing it from one angle, and it's not representative of the Adventism that I know and that I love.
Okay. To catch all that, right? Again, the issue that Alan PARR brought up was doctrine, right? Not Justin's personal viewpoint of how he sees it. It's what was written on the website, what was written at the E.G. White Estate, or wherever he went to find these quotes, going to The Great Controversy and other books and so forth like that. That's where that's at. And he's saying, well, you're seeing it half full. Well, how else should we see this? How else should we understand this stuff? And furthermore, how are all the people that are in the denomination getting it this way? Okay, I think that's the question that needs to be asked too. How is it that with 18 million people or 20 million people, whatever the number is now, how come so many people are getting it that way? Like, is everybody crazy? Like, what's going on with that? So I want kind of like, I think we need to be a little bit more honest with what's going on there. This conclusion that Alan's jumping to is not coming out of a vacuum. Alan's not stupid. He can read, right? Alan has, and you can see on, like, I was talking to another brother earlier today, that you can go on Justin's page on his videos, especially this first part here, and talk about how people who are in the denomination are saying that him being Justin does not represent them or their beliefs accurately. So we're at an impasse here. Like, what's really going on with that? Thunder?
Yeah, perfectly said. Justin is constantly trying to keep it to subjectivity, individual experiences, as opposed to the foundation of the church itself, what it says it believes and teaches officially. So that is where he's trying to play it fast and loose. And what Colin says is very true. When you watch the comments on his video, majority of the comments are, you know, it's cringy. Like, no, you are not representing and articulating what Adventism is and believes. Because again, all of this mawkish, we're all one and it's all love. We're just seeing it from different angles thing. That he's trying to, present Adventism to be. That's not what it is. As a matter of fact, I would say if you want to know what Adventism is, people like Justin don't go to them. Right? Go to the Ivan Myers, go to the Adventist Defense League, the Edwin Cottos, the Marcus Taylors, the Doug Batchelors, Ted Wilson, the president of the Adventist World Church. Go to these people. Go to their 28 fundamental beliefs. Go to Ellen White books. Right? Go to the Andrew Henriquez on YouTube and the Jeremiah Davis. These are the people who are Adventists. Go to the Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement. These are the people you're going to get Adventism from, not from these slithery, progressive, and liberal, anything goes kind of Adventism that Justin is trying to feed the public. Because Adventism itself, officially, and those who want to uphold it for the distinctive church that it is in Christendom, reject the kind of Adventism he's trying to project to the public. So that's something to look at.
So you guys are saying that any degree of disconnect from the teachings of Ellen G. White would mean that you're just not an Adventist then?
You can make that case. Because again, when you look at the fundamental doctrines, one of the fundamental doctrines is the belief in and the promulgation of what they call the gift of prophecy. And most of us on the chat, I think, are not cessationists. So we still believe in the gifts of the Spirit are at work, right? So most of us are not going to have a problem with that. The issue with Seventh-day Adventism is that it kind of hones in this larger picture and focuses it on one person. And they go on to say about the person and work of Ellen G. White. And you need to be able to agree with that before you go down into the watery grave of baptism, as they say, right? So you have to acknowledge that you believe that one of the marks of the true remnant church is the gift of prophecy. Now, again, in SDA speak, it's talking about one specific person about that. All right. Because you ask anybody else, are there any prophets walking around today? Oh, we don't need any more. We got Sister White's writings, right? So that's kind of where that goes. And some people will say, and I took Gift of Prophecy class at my alma mater when I was undergrad in Alabama, and they talk about something called the prophetic stream, where it goes from Genesis 3:15 all the way down to 1844 and beyond with Ellen White, and talks about all the prophets that kind of fit into the stream, so to speak, and each person is endowed with the ability to speak for on behalf of the Lord and so forth like that. And even the church's understanding of how what they teach about inspiration, that's a whole other show, maybe 2-3 parts on that one by itself. But what they say is that this thing, it's technically it's not closed, right? But right now they don't need anybody else. They have the mission of the three angels message and so forth like that. And so that's the kind of thing that it is. This thing is very, very much focused on Sister White.
Mm.
Yeah, while they have it kind of open, I would argue that it's closed.
Yes.
Because if you look at the mention of gift of prophecy and prophets in the Bible, anytime the gifts are mentioned in scripture, it's always plural. Mm-hmm. Ephesians 4 and all, even the proof text they used to justify the exclusive prophetic ministry of Ellen White still entails plurality. Mm-hmm. There's more than one apostles. There was more than one pastors. There's more than one teachers and sign gifts and you name it. Prophets. There's always more than one. Mm-hmm. But for Adventism, it's exclusively Ellen White. And to ensure that she remains enthroned, they have crystallized her writings as a continuing and authoritative voice that speaks truth, provides correction for the church. The new wording is her writings speak with prophetic authority. And so even though she's been dead over 100 years ago, yes, 105 now thereabout, her writing still is that prophetic voice for them. Mm-hmm. And there has not been another prophet in Adventism or alongside Ellen White from their inception to today. So even the singularity of her alone is still does not fit the biblical bill, because prophets are always mentioned in the plural. It is more than one. But you would never find Adventism accepting another person as similarly and equally a prophet. Joseph Smith and the Mary Baker Eddies and Charles Russell, all of these other guys are prophets who operated within the same time of Ellen White, who have similarities in a number of ways to Ellen White, who she plagiarized stuff from, followed their plot hook, line, and sinker. But they still would denounce their prophetic status and have Ellen White as the exclusive prophet then and now until whenever else. And I don't see it changing anytime soon.
I mean, in the New Testament, we see a list of offices, and prophet is one of them. So it's understood that multiple people can fill that office. It's not just for one individual to be the prophet. You know, so.
Right.
Cool. So what else should we look at, guys, in the video?
Oh, well, just before we take them. So the fact is, I cannot conceive of one truly being an Adventist without one's allegiance to Ellen White. Doctrinally, that's impossible. Baptismally, that is impossible. Even the Adventist culture and lifestyle and worldview and diet and you name it, it is absolutely impossible. Even if you claim to disavow her, that you don't make any bones about her, you don't care about her, your Adventist life and worldview and culture is shaped by Ellen G. White.
That's facts.
Ellen White is the Adventist, what Joseph Smith is to Mormons, what Charles Russell is to Jehovah's Witnesses, what Helena Blavatsky is to Theosophists, and what Muhammad is to Islam to Muslims. There's just no possible way of going around that. And if an Adventist can, show it to me otherwise that there is, then please do. Please do. I've been trying to figure it out and I just can't. So help me out here.
I tried the Ellen White light Adventism for a little while in college, and it doesn't work, man. It really doesn't, and that's one of those things that you can try, but it doesn't hold water otherwise. Because if you take that away and then go back to the scriptures without the extra filter on it, oh man, none of this stuff stands. Like it's oh my gosh, it's so horrible. Anyway,
that's why I'm no longer an Adventist today. You just put Ellen White, and I challenge anyone. I challenge you for a couple of months, or just put Ellen White and Adventist worldview aside and read your Bible by itself, without the Ellen White filters, and see what happens. Anytime anyone does that, look at all of the former Adventists from the various levels of the church. That is the first kind of thing for majority of us. Put Ellen White aside and see to read the Bible for what it is. And what happens in no time, Adventism crumbles. No time.
Wow. Cool. So, okay, guys. So, what else do you want to speak on when it comes to the video?
We can go to the next what you call it? We got time. So yeah, the next timestamp here is at 52:42. Right. And then so you'll see the people in the chat here. You'll be seeing Alan's pushback, right? And Justin claims that some people might have been taught that it's salvific. Well, actually, we can skip that one, and because that's too easy to refute right there.
Okay, so all right. So what's the next timestamp?
The next time is 56:50, right?
Okay.
All right, so 56:50, and you guys want to pay attention to what the words that Justin is using in terms of what Alan PARR is bringing, because there's some pushback back and forth, and it's very nice because I've never met Alan before, but he seems like a really cool guy, and he's trying to be extremely cordial. I mean, you're on someone else's platform, you're gonna you're not gonna come in guns blazing and licking shots, whatever the case is, but at some point in time, okay, well you'll see the pushback there, and I want you to kind of take a look at the response. And keep in mind, have you ever seen this kind of thing before? Okay, so go ahead and play for us, brother.
Cool.
To that person, that I would simply say, I'm sorry. That person who taught you that wasn't teaching what the Bible teaches. And here's the part that, to answer your question, isn't actually teaching what the church teaches either.
That's talking about the salvific nature of the Sabbath. But go ahead.
Always heartbroken over that, because it just puts you in a terrible place. Like we were talking about, no assurance of salvation, no peace and joy. it literally takes what the Sabbath was meant to in its essence, flips it on its head, bastardizes it, and literally accomplishes the exact opposite of what the Sabbath was meant to accomplish. So I mean, there's a million and one ways to answer this, but I don't know if it's helpful for us to go for like an actual theological discussion,
Right.
but
Right.
because that's not really what I care to do. If people want to know about
Sure.
the Sabbath, like, cool, well, I'm happy to talk about it. But all that to say, where it's been taught that way, I would echo, no, that's wrong. It's not good. It's not what the Bible teaches, nor is it what actually Adventism teaches. When Adventism actually communicates its beliefs, the Sabbath is always done in the same way that you would do something, like it would be the way that you treat your wife. Like date night isn't a requirement. Like this is the actual language that the majority of Adventists understand the Sabbath. It's your special date with God. It's a 1 week reoccurring intimate time with God. In the same way that you don't have date nights with your wife in order to stay married from this like struggling to achieve workspace. Like, no, you have date nights with your wife because you love her and because you want to foster intimacy in your relationship. It's a gift.
Mhm.
Date night is a gift for the two of you. That's how Adventists actually view and teach the Sabbath. That Sabbath is a memorial of his creative and redemptive power. And because we are saved by grace through faith, because of what Jesus has accomplished, we enter into the rest that he has already purchased for us.
Right. And obviously, like you said, our goal is not to get into the theological stuff, which we won't. But the question that we have to ask if we use that analogy is, so if I marry my wife and we're married for, I don't know, 50 years, and I never one time ever take her out on a date, wouldn't that bring into question whether I love my wife? I mean, like, because if I love her, I would date her. I would take her out on a date. And I think that's where the disconnect is. It's like, okay, sometimes it can be presented as, okay, we love the Lord because we keep this one day. But if you go your entire life and you don't, like, how can you say you love the Lord when you're not dating him once a week? And that's the interesting part. What about all the people that are dating him once a week, but not on that day? And so that's a whole nother conversation we don't have to get into today. But like I date the Lord on Wednesdays every day. That's my date night with him. Like, why am I looked on as different because I choose Wednesday to date the Lord and you choose, Friday to Saturday? So it's just an interesting type of thing.
You're not looked at differently, not by the church as a whole. Will there be people in Adventism that look at you differently and look at you as less than? Absolutely. But that's probably true of every church, because you don't speak in tongues, you're not quite manifesting the gifts of the Spirit, or because, you don't tithe as much as I do, then it's like, simply because you can have the experience doesn't mean that that's what the organization is actually putting forward in the least bit. Adventism actually has a very open view of salvation, perhaps maybe even more open than some Christians are comfortable with. Like, people feel like we're erring on this side. I think that the reality is that you would feel that we're erring on the other side. Every Adventist who knows what Adventism teaches would be very comfortable to say, someone like Alan, who, if I understand, you're a Baptist, right?
No, I'm non-denominational. I grew up Baptist though.
Okay.
But
so
I would say,
every Adventist who understands what Adventism teaches would be like, hey, as far as I can tell, as long as Alan's living up to the light that he has, he loves the Lord, like, boom, like he's in. If he's put his faith in Christ, like, you're saved. That's true of Catholics. That's true of Methodists. That's true of Baptists or Pentecostals. Adventists would even go a little bit further to say, hey, if someone's living up to the light that they have, even if they've never heard the name of Jesus, God can choose to include them in Jesus's saving work as well. And so we understand the passage like there's no other way to salvation but through Jesus. In the same way, like if you're driving up you're going up the Pacific Coast Highway and you say, hey, there's only one freeway to get from this part of the island to this next part, and it's the 5 North. Even if you don't know that it's called the 5 North, there's only one way to get there. So if you somehow make it here, you only made it here because of that one way, that one freeway. And so we would say, we would interpret that the way that someone is saved can only be through the work of Jesus. But the crazy part is that we would even go further and say, even if you didn't hear his audible name, Jesus or Yeshua, like say, for example, someone like Abraham or David or anyone in the Old Testament who have never heard the name Jesus, if they make it to heaven, it's not because they kept the old covenant really well, because record would show they didn't.
Right.
If they make it to the kingdom, it's because of what Jesus had done on their behalf. And so we actually have a much more open view of salvation than is oftentimes represented in
Alfred, you can stop there, brother. I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got questions.
Right.
I got a couple questions. So, date night, right?
Yes.
A lot of times, and there's no one way to date your wife, obviously. But, for most Americans, and maybe and definitely the Caribbean, date night might be dinner and a movie, right? Can you purchase anything on Shabbat?
Well, depends on if you're from California or
right?
Yep.
And not that you have to purchase anything to be on a date with your wife. You could just sit down and have a nice meal in the house. But I guess you got to have the lights on or off. Like, how does that So that, to me, that analogy is not really that great because it kind of goes against the actual Sabbath, right? So, and then here's my next thing.
It's subjective.
And then my next thing is, so someone can stumble into Christ.
Yeah.
That's my two things that I find very interesting. But go ahead, guys.
Yeah. They believe in salvation by ignorance, as he's pushing there. So yes, they believe that to a certain extent, but is salvation in ignorance. And so as long as you don't know about the Sabbath, and you are, again, it is peculiar Adventist terms, living according to the best light that you have. That's how they see most non-Adventist Christians who aren't aware of the Sabbath yet. There's still a chance for them. So God is able to save them because they're ignorant of the Sabbath. But here's the flip side. But once you come to know of the Sabbath and you reject it, you're toast. It doesn't matter how cute you were anymore. It doesn't matter how theologically sound, how much you love the Lord, and how much of a nice person you were, how dedicated to Christ and the church. You are toast because you became aware of the Sabbath and you rejected it. And so that is the flip side to it. And so Ellen White is clear. People like me and Colin, we are essentially hopeless. It's impossible for us to stand any chance of salvation because we are former Adventists. And worse off, we are, what they would call apostates who are attacking the church now by, showing what they believe and teach and showing the errors of it.
So ignorance is literally bliss then.
Yes.
Yeah, when it comes to the Sabbath for them. But as you come to know that you reject, that's it. You're not ignorant anymore. You cannot be saved. And that is why for a lot of them, when they go in an area to do crusades or whatever ministry, proselytization, and they get in the pushback, they're not getting converts, they usually get cynical, angry and upset and just don't care. And what they do is just preach anyhow, tell you about the Sabbath, and as long as they tell you the blood is off their hands, you're going to be condemned, and it's up to you, basically. That's where they are with that. So it's not that it's this cute date night thing and what others would have thought. Anyway, after Colin makes a statement, we can go into that too. Again, how does everyone, including Ellen White, get it wrong with respect to what the Adventist Sabbath is? And only Justin and maybe a few among his clique who seem to get it right to see it as just a cute, sentimental date night with God. Go ahead, Colin.
Wait, so I have another question. So somebody who's a practicing Muslim, right? They believe in Isa, right? In Jesus, right? They're living their best light and life. Islam, they're submitting to God. They took their shahada, right? They're holding on to the festivals and fasts, very beautiful human being. So he good. Yeah, according to the SDAs.
As long as he doesn't know of the Sabbath and Ellen White and Adventist doctrines, he's good.
Wow.
But if he comes to know of them and reject, he's no longer good.
Right.
He's toast.
And there's some SDA pastors that will go as far as to say that the Christian God Yahweh is the same deity as Allah, right? And if y'all caught the last bodega that we did, the special night when we talked about Steve Harvey, that ain't the case. you know, like at all. So I mean, if you missed that after this, come on back, right? And catch it after Bodega tonight. But yeah, that's not the same thing. And you'll have a lot of people, and I was one of them too. Like, you know, you'll have a lot of people that Islam gets a pass in Seventh-day Adventist circles, you know. And sometimes they'll say things like, okay, well, in a lot of Muslim countries, their holy day or their rest day is on Friday, right? And they'll be like, oh, you just got to go through the Sabbath, man. You're almost there. And that's kind of the common ground that they find. You believe in one God. Oh, you believe in one God too, you know, and like they'll find common ground and try to talk about things that way. But it's so skewed. You know, they have the common ground again of like dietary laws that they would share in common, you know, and so forth like that. So a lot of things, it's very strange. Again, makes for strange bedfellows, as they say. But yeah, that's one thing that we have to be careful of when we're looking at this. Is what is being said accurate according to the scriptures, you know? And real quick, I'm going to touch on that the Justin's comment about the Sabbath being just a date night, right? This is from The Great Controversy, page 691. Again, the flagship book. I'm going to read a paragraph and a half here from page 691. It says in Ezekiel 9 and verse 4 and Revelation 7 verses 2 and 3, the mark or sign is said to be placed in the foreheads of the servants of God. Both these scriptures refer to a time when utter destruction is coming on the ungodly. The seal is placed upon God's people as a safeguard to preserve them from the evil impending. But the forehead, in their quotes, is evidently used as a figure to denote the intellect or mind, as the heart is used to denote the disposition of affections. To mark or seal in the forehead is the same as to write in the mind. Hebrews 10 and 16 is the proof text. The Sabbath is the sign of God. It is the seal of his law. Isaiah 8 and 16, it is the token of his authority and power. It is a sign whereby we may know that he is God, and therefore it is appropriately to be said to be placed in the forehead. The worshipers of the beast, Revelation 13, are said to receive his mark in their foreheads or in their hands, as the forehead represents the intellect and the hand represents power. As Psalm 89:48, shall he deliver his soul from the hand of the grave? Compulsory worship is not acceptable to God. His servants are sealed only in their foreheads, but it is acceptable to wicked powers. It has always been craved by the Romish hierarchy. That's the Pope and the papacy, y'all. See chapter 25 for proof of this nature of this mark. The sign or seal of God is his Sabbath. I'll say that again. The sign or seal of God is his Sabbath, and the seal or the mark of the beast is in direct opposition to it. It is a counterfeit Sabbath on the day of the sun. Okay, y'all caught that? So if you worship on Sunday, you know what it is. According to Revelation 14, 9 and verse 14 verses 9 to 12, they who do not receive the mark of the beast keep the commandments of God, and the Sabbath is in the fourth precept. They hashtag precept. They keep the Sabbath of the Lord. They have his sign or seal. The importance of this sign is shown in this, that the fourth commandment is the only one in the law which distinguishes the creator from false gods. And so this literally is the difference between the mark of the beast and the seal of God. So unless you're going to make the case that you can get the mark of the beast and be saved, you're not going to hear that on this channel, y'all. Right? So unless you're going to try and make that case, right, then Sabbath truly is the demarcation and the line between eternal life and eternal damnation. So you be the judge of that.
Absolutely. I'm about to read a paragraph too from the 28 fundamental beliefs of the Adventist churches. Is their official denominational beliefs, not what Justin who is saying now. This is what they officially believe. Now, some will argue, well, this is future, so it doesn't apply now. But the issue still stands. The issue still stands, even though the mark of the beast is not a current reality for Adventists and the Christian church and the world at large. The fact that most Christians go to church on Sunday is still looked down upon by Adventists. It is still a moral issue. You are still in disobedience. They still see it as their duty to proselytize you to invite you to accept this Advent truth of Sabbath keeping so that you can avoid the mark of the beast when it comes. You are seen as an apostate, a pagan Sunday worshiper. You're a daughter of the whore of Babylon. That's how they refer to Sunday churches. And so even though the mark of the beast is something they expect to now, every year with every US president, etc., it don't come yet. The fact is, irrespective of your position, whether deliberately going to church on Sunday and knowing of the Sabbath or in ignorance, they still see it as a moral violation. You're still doing something wrong, and that wrong needs to be corrected. So the theology itself is still false, irrespective of now versus the eschatological Sunday law. Now, let me read something from, again, the official beliefs of the Adventist Church. This is fundamental belief number, I think, is 20, the Sabbath, page 295. And this is the heart of Adventist eschatology. The proclamation of the message of Revelation 14, 6-12 in connection with the everlasting gospel accomplishes this work of restoring and magnifying the law of God, 10 Commandments. And the proclaiming of this message is the mission of God's church, the Adventist church, at the time of the second Advent. See chapter 13 of this book, which talks about the remnant. This message is to arouse the world, inviting everyone to prepare for the judgment. The wording of the summons to worship the Creator, Him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of waters, Revelation 14:7, is a direct reference to the fourth commandments of God's eternal law. Its inclusion in this final warning confirms God's special concern to have His widely forgotten Sabbath restored before the second Advent. The delivering of this message will precipitate a conflict. This is more than just a cute, fancy, uxorious date with God, right? It will precipitate a conflict that will involve the entire world. The central issue will be obedience to God's law and the observance of the Sabbath. In the face of this conflict, everyone must decide whether to keep God's commandments or those of men. And their commandments referring to the Sabbath here, the 10 Commandments. This message will produce a people who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, Adventists and those who join them, and those who reject it. The Advent message and the Sabbath message they will be proclaiming. Those who reject it will receive the mark of the beast, which is going to church on Sunday. It's talking about here. So unless I have sudden aphasia, unless I have sudden dyslexia, one must explain to me, how can this be just a cute, sentimentalistic date with God? This is a subjective date with God. Yet eternal salvation is at the heart of it, where it will determine. Ellen White even said that. And we have produced a lot of videos showing the quotes, where how one relates to the Sabbath at the mark of the beast issue will determine the faith of many professing Christians. And the Sabbath will be the great wall of demarcation between the true Israel of God and the false, etc. So if this is just a cute date with God and it's presented wrong and everybody has it wrong, how is it the official belief says it? How is it the flagship book of Advent is the great controversy? Says all of this. Everybody. So you mean to tell me Ted Wilson has it wrong? All of the pastors and scholars in Adventism, Ellen White herself got it wrong, but only Justin Coe and maybe just a small part of his cohorts have it right, that it's a cute, fanciful date with God, and that it is not what, we believe it is. Well, y'all got a lot of revamping to do. Y'all got to take Mark Finley off the air. Y'all got to take Doug Batchelor off the air, close down all y'all Adventist side. Y'all got to pull back the Adventist Defense League, Edwin Cordo and Marcus and Jason and those guys, because this is what they defended. This is what they preach and teach and defend. He's about to produce a response to Alan PARR. Listen keenly to what he'll defend. Right? Y'all got to pull Ivan Myers and Dwayne Lemon. Y'all got to do a whole revamp of Adventism, because everybody seems to have it wrong except Justin and few of them who have it right, and then they need to teach the rest of the Adventist world. The correct thing about the Sabbath, that it's a date with God, and this is how it should be presented.
fire. Dawkins.
Oh, yeah.
You kidding?
That's
Not the real.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh man.
So we're gonna go to the next timestamp, which is the 102:36, right?
No, skip that one. Go to
Oh, skip
107.
that one.
Yeah,
All right. So give me a minute. So talk amongst yourselves. Hold on.
yeah. No, that's facts. JP Davis says that golden clasp look real piratish right now. Facts, G. You know, and that's the thing, man. I mean, a lot of times, like they'll try to soften the blow, right? Because like again, when you go to there are, and to be fair, there are quote unquote liberals and conservatives within the church, right? But as you will see in this, I think it's the next quote here, when Justin starts talking about liberals and conservatives, right? That is not so much as like a political sideline, although they do kind of go along those lines in some ways, right? But the fact of the matter is that people within the organization, they're going to say, well, we think it should be like this. And other people will say, no, this is what was written here. So therefore, we should do it like this. Now, mind you, they're way right, so to speak. And the liberals who affirm a lot of stuff that political liberals will affirm, that's all I'm going to say right now, because I want to stay on the air for a little longer. Right? A lot of the things, they will kind of say, okay, there's that. But then there's this other group that are way, way, way over here. Those are the ones who continue to take Ellen and the early church writings extremely seriously, to the point that they will say the Adventist church has got it wrong. And there's a remnant within the remnant, and that's them. Okay. Now, I don't know. I've never seen that terminology, remnant within the remnant, in scripture. Right? Maybe I missed it. I don't know. But like, there's a lot of people who will say that, and then all of a sudden, the conclave gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Until it's only, this group in this hole in the wall, somewhere out in the hills of Texas, or they don't have hills, but you know what I'm saying? Somewhere in the desert of Texas somewhere, right? That's literally what happened in 1993. Y'all remember Waco, Texas? I'm old, so I remember that. But y'all remember David Koresh and stuff like that. The church went ballistic when that happened because he was originally identified as a Seventh-day Adventist. And he wasn't. He was part of the Branch Davidians, right? But Vernon Howell, before he became David Koresh, actually was a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And then he kind of went way right, as it were, kind of went all the way out the deep end, and joined the Branch Davidians and so forth, and then became their leader. However, he did that. But to this day, you can look up the Branch Davidians website and look up their list of shepherds. And you'll see who is number one on that list is Sister Ellen Gould White. So you tell me how that happens. Okay. So yeah.
Wow. That's whoo. That's that fire right there, boy. All right. So you ready?
Yeah, we'll go here and we'll talk. We'll hear about this conservatism thing here. Go ahead, bro.
All right, cool.
Okay, I respect that. All power to you. But then there's another group that doesn't. And my goal was to hey, let's not pass judgment on one another. Let's respect one another, because I feel like our love for the Lord can be expressed and should be expressed in a plethora of ways, and not just so singular focused. The observance of the Sabbath. It's like, okay, I'm treating people well. I'm giving. I'm serving. I'm loving my wife. I'm confessing my sin. There's so many ways that we can express our love for the Lord.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. You had a second question.
Yeah. So the second question I had was, because you are or seem to come across as more of a moderate and not necessarily an extremist in the Adventist faith, does your denomination in any way, maybe see you any differently because you're not telling people, that they have to obey the Sabbath, or, kind of what does that relationship look like?
So I think your question actually lands on one of the complexities, to me, beautiful complexities about Adventism, and that's the incredibly diverse nature of our denomination. That's true both politically. There are people who fall far left, or maybe not far left, who are on the left, who are on the right, people who believe different things when it comes to theology, who would be more theologically conservative or theologically progressive or liberal or moderate or whatever the language is. And this is kind of one of the best things about Adventism. A friend of mine, a pastor within Adventism, describes Adventism as a large tent with a lot of different people underneath it. And I think that that's a good thing, that diversity lends to creativity. It lends to an outside of the box type of a thinking. And so, there are absolutely people within Adventism who might watch this exact video and say, no, Justin, you don't represent us. Like, that's not Adventism as I've heard it or I've taught it. It's like, okay, that's probably true. And then there will be many other people who would say, no, what Justin is communicating, at least in spirit, is exactly on for what Adventism means to me. And, for what
Israel had a large tent too.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's called the tabernacle. And everybody was in lockstep with Yahweh. So that's, again, horrible analogy from our friend here. But continue.
Yeah. So did you catch all that, fam? And here's the note that I had on that section. I was like, I really, really wish Alan Parr would have challenged Justin to define what do you mean by conservatism and liberalism in the church? Like, I really wish you would have did that, because and that's the question that a lot of people have, and why a lot of people who are in SDA circles don't like to talk to people like Elsie and myself. And like I said, I really don't know as much as a lot of people do, but a lot of people do not like to talk to us, especially because when we know follow-up questions to ask, right? That's the thing. If you don't know enough, you don't know what to ask. And if you ask, what does conservatism mean in an SDA circle? What does liberalism mean in an SDA circle? You would be shocked to say that people in this church believe in certain things and are justified and find justification in this thing based on the doctrines. Okay. Conservatism really means that you take what you see in these books seriously. Okay, I alluded to that earlier. But the fact of the matter is, when you have like things like the Adventist home and how should you raise your children, or you should raise them to celebrate the Sabbath, and have special meals, and everyone should have a special Sabbath suit and all this kind of stuff. And people really do that. I had a guy in the church that I used to grow up in, rather. He would wear, every now and again, he'd wear 13 Sabbaths is a big thing at the end of the quarter. And usually we do like baptisms and stuff like that then, or communion rather. And so he used to dress up in a tux to come to church because it's God's day. You know what I mean? And it was kind of weird, but okay, you like that sort of thing, I ain't mad at you, right? And it's something as simple as that. But then when you look at the mindset behind it, that when Ellen says you have to have you should have a special suit, then I'm going to go out and break the bank and have a special suit, right? We talked about it earlier, where we can't have baking and boiling on the Sabbath, so there's no cooking, but then when you're making your dinner and you work on Fridays, what are you going to do for Sabbath dinner? You should prepare earlier in the week, and not so you're feeling guilty because Thursday you got to set up your pot roast and kind of warm it up and leave it in the oven on real low, you know what I'm saying, or whatever you do, or your dinner loaf or whatever you eat. I don't know, like cottage cheese loaf, but that kind of thing. It's one of those things that you really start to look at, what does that actually mean, conservatism versus liberalism in an SDA setting, because it's not what you think it is.
Right. That's very fair. And also, what percentage of the doctrines and beliefs that are absolutes for one to be considered, one of either side? So again, when you go into these issues, you actually see that those who do not follow the doctrines and the teachings as they are, Ellen White herself considers them to be apostates and lukewarm, and they're doing something bad. I need to read her writings more and come back to what Adventism is and should be. She even goes so far as to say that if Adventists were following her teachings and the rules she laid down as they should, the world would see them as squares and fanatics.
Yep.
That's how much stuff she regulates it to the amount of times you should chew when you're eating. You shouldn't have fruits and vegetables together, and you shouldn't drink while you eat. It's so many things, bro,
Yep.
that are necessary, that define one as an Adventist and to prepare one for translation. So what really does it look like, Justin? And should it be where we put the doctrines and Ellen White aside and just go to individual Adventists to get their subjective views and opinions? Or should we go to what you're trying to avoid over and over, which is official publications and the theological discussion? I know this is not a theological discussion. He keeps repeating that, but the fact of the matter is he has issues with Alan PARR's videos because of the theological stuff he produced about Adventism. But all of a sudden in his dialogue, he doesn't want to have any form of theological discussion. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make, at least to me, it doesn't make sense. The fact of the matter is, I don't see how one can claim to be Adventist and a legitimate Adventist, and yet, you don't have to believe this and teach that, and everybody else just has it wrong, but only me and somebody else has it right. That's not how it goes. It doesn't work that way, and that is why me and Colin continue to reiterate: read for yourself, right? Read Ellen White's books for yourself. Read the 28 Fundamental Beliefs. Watch the leadership and those who are authorized to preach the Advent message to all the world. Watch what they see and consistently put out there to see what Adventism is. The likes of Justin, they don't represent Adventism.
It's funny how you phrase it, like, that he's coming across as if everyone is wrong except him and his little crew, like they have it on straight. That's kind of how the cults begin, right? It's like, I have it correct. Everybody else is wrong but me. I figured it out. A lot of cults begin just that way, right? So that's very
Adventism. That's how it started. That's what it continues to propagate. The entire Christian church is wrong, and it exclusively is right, and it's the remnant church of Bible prophecy, tasked by God with a special message to give to the world, including the Christian church. It's right there.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it earlier, about apostasy, right? And if you look at the documentation and do a Google search of apostate Protestantism and see what you come up with. Apostate Protestantism is you.
Yep.
You believe in Jesus, right?
You're the man.
Right. You believe in Jesus, but you go to church on Sunday. You go to, you believe in Jesus, but you had a BLT at lunch. So too bad for you. You're not doing it right. You know what I'm saying? So it is very strange, that kind of thing. And like I said, I want to I don't want to get too much time away from get caught up like we did last week. So we'll skip one. I put it in the private chat there, but Kelsey, you did a great quote there. I think BK already put it up on the screen, but yeah, that's dope. You always have to define terms, because if you don't define terms, it's going to be all bad, everybody. So there you go. Next one, 110. Yes, sir.
Yep, let's go.
Media and things like that. And so I'd like to say that for what it's worth, I do represent a good, healthy chunk of the Adventist denomination. And I guess this kind of brings up the question, and something that I'd love to kind of toss back to you. And it's really, it's like, how do you decide who represents Adventism well? Because from what our conversations have been over the last several years, I get the sense that you and I are very much on the same page as far as what matters and what, is maybe important but isn't central. But then also, you had this experience with ex-Adventists and people who are very critical of the church. And I'm just wondering how for you put weight into one person's perspective or story or experience versus the other person's.
Yeah. So, I like to, get a variety of people's experiences, because I do understand that just like in evangelical Christianity, if you could talk to people, and you got some people that say, you have to speak in tongues in order to love the Lord. You have to speak in tongues in order to be saved. You have to be speaking tongues to demonstrate that you have the gift of the Holy Spirit. You have to be saved only by calling on the name of Jesus versus Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And you have to be baptized by, immersion and not sprinkling. And I mean, there's a million different, you could talk to people and it's not just, okay, one dimensional. So, I try to, look at people's hearts and say, okay, this one particular member of Adventism or of the Adventist faith doesn't necessarily always represent the entire denomination any more than I would want any one Christian to be the spokesperson for, or one Baptist or one non-denominational, or I'm not a charismatic or a Pentecostal, but I would assume that they wouldn't want, one member of their denomination to represent, all of them. And just, we're flawed individuals. And sometimes we don't always speak, with perfect accuracy, or we may let our flesh get the best of us. So, I just take things on a case-by-case basis, and which is the reason why with my videos, I tried my best to not necessarily focus on any individual conversation I've had with one or two Adventists, because I knew beforehand that would get me into trouble. But it was more so, okay, how can I now go to the source and as best I can look at the website and then look at, some of the writings of, Ellen G. White, which I know, who I know is very well respected in your faith, and look at those and say, okay, how can I harmonize these things with what I believe the scriptures are saying?
Yeah. And I
Thank you, Pastor. So I hope y'all caught that, man. So like Justin lays this not a trap, but he plays victim, and he's like, well, you wouldn't choose one person to represent your denomination, or you wouldn't choose just one person to represent all Baptists, or one person to represent all Pentecostals, or whatever the case is, which is fair, right? But Justin is saying, but I represent a good chunk of Seventh-day Adventists, right? And so he's kind of falling on his own sword right here. And so he wants Alan Parr to give him grace based on that standard. But then he's saying that I represent the majority of this thing. Now, if we were to flip the table and say, okay, well, Justin, you don't represent the chunk of Seventh-day Adventism. It's those crazy people out there that are waiting for the Sunday law to drop, right? And they moved off the grid, so they don't, they can't be found by the Gestapo that's going to come for them, right? Like there's people out there like that. There's people and like, mind you, they're not your mainstream Seventh-day Adventists. So make sure you hear me and hear me well. It's not normal SDAs that would do that. But there's people that will have groups that they'll have families living together. And from what I understand, I've only heard this from one or two people, that they would have a person kind of looking to the east because they know that a cloud about the size of a man's hand, right, is going to be coming from the east, and that's going to be Jesus coming to rescue his people. They're waiting for that, physically looking for this, right? And so this is the kind of thing that you have this kind of mindset on a regular basis. Like I don't understand why we should believe, if we take Justin seriously, why we can't hold him according to his own standard.
And this is again why I say, go back to the book and what they officially hold. Everything Ellen White says is official Adventist documentation. Everything. Adventism has not said, well, this aspect of her writings are inspired. These are not. This is to be taken 100% serious. This one you could have 50%, 25%. It doesn't do that. Ellen White doesn't even do that. Ellen White disavows of that. Everything is equally from God or it's equally from Satan. And so with that, whatever you read from Ellen White is official Adventist beliefs. Her writings speak with prophetic authority. She's no different in prophetic authority than Moses and the Elijahs and all of the biblical authors. And you can find tons of official Adventists, GC presidents, scholars, you name it, who make the same arguments and correlation. So go to what Ellen White says and what the official documentations of the church say. And you would see that what Justin is trying to present is not, factual at all. And he is veering off what Adventism is. And what we are showing it to be is what it should be.
Yep. That's it. Right. You got the last one here, brother?
What's the?
I'm sorry. I got two more. 112.54.
Okay.
Yeah, 112.54.
Oh, 112.54. Okay, we're already there. So you want
Okay.
to
Yeah.
you want to say what it is, or just play it?
No, I mean, people in the chat, y'all are picking everything up that we want to say, and so I'm glad that you were watching this, and we're just breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, right? Because a lot of people are looking on some of this stuff as if, like, you know, Justin's just a nice guy. How come Alan's attacking him, right? And Alan did not attack this guy. He's asking questions, right? Anyway, but you'll see. Just go ahead and play, bro.
All right.
Admire that desire to be as neutral and objective as you possibly can, and I know that the videos that you've created are your best attempt at doing that. And with that being true, if I can maybe wear my heart on the sleeve a little bit, that's not how it felt watching the videos. You certainly highlighted unexperience within Adventism, unfortunately much more numerous than I would ever hope. You have found the very vocal minority of people who have been really hurt by the denomination. I don't want to ever downplay that, but it is a very small subsection. And so to kind of like even just the title of your video, I was wrong about Seventh-day Adventism. Like, okay, cool, you could be wrong, but like between you and me, I know kind of what's happening also behind the scenes with the planning of the SEO of the video and thinking of titles that are clickable and all that.
Yeah.
It felt not from like the theology side, like I'm happy to agree to disagree with you, but as a friend, I felt honestly somewhat betrayed that that you would sensationalize the conversation to that level. If I can be completely transparent, I felt kind of betrayed as someone who holds you in high esteem as a friend, that, you know, you wouldn't even just picked up the phone and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Am I reading this right? Am I spinning, like, the way that I'm interpreting some of these words, is this correct? Because I think if you were to talk to any other type of Adventist, they would say, oh, no, you're misreading the intention of these statements. Like, you're actually interpreting them in the worst light possible. And as I'm watching through the video, it felt it felt like you were attributing malice to the denomination as a whole, with saying things like, oh, they're specifically trained to hide parts of their theology, for example. Like, if that were true, then we wouldn't have our entire belief system on the internet in public view for everyone to see. Like, and so it felt like you had made the transition from, hey, this is my friend who we agree to disagree, to, oh, this is now Alan PARR. This is the host of The Beat doing a sensationalist approach to a controversial topic because it'll get clicks and views, and maybe because he's maybe retreating a bit because of the public backlash of the first video. I know that's a whole lot. That it's my interpretation.
All right, so can we talk about the hypocrisy right there?
Yeah, let's.
Oh man.
I mean, he's complaining that he's teaching that SDAs are taught not to show their theology, but did anyone really know where he stood in his theology until recent? Right? So
he said it himself. That's the second time when he made the promo that he publicly said he was an SDA.
Yeah.
So for a couple of years of operating on YouTube, and even, you know, Alan's friend or whatever, and nobody knew. If you looked at the video, people are shocked. But let me address something, and this is something that the public needs to understand. The mindset of Adventists, right? Just how deeply occultic that is, and the groove, the unbreakable groove in their mind. You see, because they think that they have arrived at the pinnacle of truth, of biblical and theological truth. There's nothing else out there. There's nothing that needs to be improved upon in terms of the truth that God has given to them. So there's no possible way, there's no logical, possible, biblical, any reasonable way no one have had this amazing Adventist truth and actually leave it. So he would not grant that me and Colin left for theological reasons. And since I came out in February 2016, I keep stating my reason for leaving is strictly theological. I am friends with a number of former Adventists, and I can say 95 to 99% of those I've interacted with so far, from Dale Ratzlaff to Colleen Tinker to hordes of others, the number one reason we all have left is strictly theological. We've discovered the doctrines to be wrong. They're not biblically orthodox. There's not Christian church and historically orthodox. And we have left for that. Mm-hmm. But Justin can never grant us that. The Adventist church will never grant us that because of the mindset. This is all there is, the pinnacle of truth. How can you leave over that? And so you must have been hurt. Somebody hurt you. That is the number one charge they lay at our feet. Somebody hurt you. Who hurt you? And I'm sorry, and I apologize on behalf of the church. Save me that mawkish gump. I gave up an entire career, a wife and 2 kids. Gold Street paid before me in Adventism. I was expected to be the next big name in Adventism in Jamaica and around the world as I get around. As a matter of fact, when the professors were trying to dissuade me from leaving, they couldn't persuade me on theological grounds because they knew how sharp and quick-witted I was with the doctrines and biblical facts. You know what they were trying to tell me? Just preach what the church teaches. The church will pay you well. Don't destroy your career like that. And I gave up all of that. Theological reasons. Nobody hurt me. I've been hurt by a lot of Adventist pastors and you name it. Who cares about that? Humans will be humans. Everywhere you are, people gonna hurt you. People gonna hurt you in your marriage, your parents, your siblings, even in the body of Christ, Orthodox Christianity, people gonna hurt you. But guess what? We endure the hurt if we are in the right place and we continue to grow and learn and love each other and be better. But when we find out that trust has been betrayed, the theology is wrong, what happens? Those of us who have integrity, we move on. That's why a majority of us left, but they could never grant that. The number one excuse every single one of them will always throw at us is, who hurt you? Those who have been hurt. And it's a small group. No, that's not true. That's not true. From Adventism has been tallying those who leave. I think it's the last tally I read, over 50% of the membership is gone. And even the representative membership right now is not accurate. The numbers are fudged. It's because they won't claim the books and let go of people's name, but a lot of people yearly leave the Adventist church. You're never going to find a former Presbyterian fellowship, a former Baptist, or former non-denominational. What are you going to find? The churches that are cults, you're going to find former Adventist fellowship. Why is that so? Former Jehovah's Witnesses, former Mormons. Why is that so? Because of the mindset and the errors of the theology. And persons who are leaving are just left to just wander on their own. Majority go into atheism and agnosticism, and they need help to learn what is orthodox and biblical Christianity and to find a good footing. We left over doctrine, not because people heard us.
Ooh, mic drop. Just definitely a mic drop moment. Nice.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that it's extremely disingenuous, and it like you said, if you have a situation where you can demonstrate from the scriptures where the error is, right? And especially like with people like me who have family, I think of Servant of Christ Ministries. He was not a Seventh-day Adventist, but he was a former Hebrew Israelite, and he had to leave his family behind and just go with what was right. There are many of us who have left family behind as well. And so for me, all of my immediate family is still Seventh-day Adventist. Most of my extended family is Adventist as well. All of my friends growing up, like the closest ones anyway, are still at SDA to this day, most of them. And it's bothersome, you know, and sometimes, you know, we talk about the stuff, they watch some of my stuff and be like, yo, you made a good point over here. And well, I didn't really get that. Or, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I can't really, you know, I don't really get down like that. That's fine for me. Go ahead and study and read up and do what you got to do. I'm not trying to, you know, hurt people's feelings or whatever the case is, but if we're called to talk about the truth, we got to talk about the truth. Fact. This is bottom line. And for me, I had nothing but love and joy within that denomination. You know, I've good days and bad days, of course, but you know, overall, I had the best time. I never had a bad time when I was there. You know, loving church, great church, no church abuse in my family or anything of that nature. So for me, like that's one of those things that you know, you can't put that on everybody, right? There are people who can read, there are people who can study, and then notice that there's something like this is not quite right. Why is it like this? And then when you get answers and they're not satisfactory and you keep digging and you find out it gets worse and worse and worse and worse the more that you dig. So with that said, some people just figure, you know what, I'm not even gonna look at it. I just love the Lord. I'm glad I'm right here. I'm happy, and that's all I need. We have a bit of responsibility for that, you know.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, okay, this has got to be the last clip. Okay, so we're just gonna go for it. You tell me when to stop it. All right.
Yep.
Of this, I know that that's not your heart, but I just wanted to say that's how it came across and that's how it felt, being on the other side of this equation.
Yeah. And I can definitely understand how it came across, you know, that way. And let me also just say publicly, you know, to you and to anyone else who may watch this video that you are right. You know, I should have reached out to you specifically and personally, you know, because we are friends and I do value our friendship, to say, hey, Justin, look, man, you know, look, I put out a video. This is what I thought. You know, but now I'm reading different things in that nature. You know, what are your thoughts, you know, on this? Help me understand what you all's position is. And for that, I do apologize, you know, and ask for forgiveness in that regard, because I should have done that. You know, I just felt as though, you know, the people that I spoke with, they weren't hurt by the denomination at all. They just basically came to a different understanding of scripture and different understanding of how they interpreted the scriptures based on what they were reared to believe. But there was no malice or any sort of negative, you know, hurt or church hurt or any of those things. And so, you know, I trusted that they would give me a proper understanding, considering that they were in it for so long. I was like, okay, they're not necessarily they don't have an agenda to get back at the denomination as much as it is to help me understand, you know, hey, this isn't necessarily what, you know, what your understanding is not the same. And then also there was a part of me, and once again, this is me admitting that I probably could have gone a different route, but there was a part of me that it just seemed like so many of the statements that I read, particularly from Ellen G. White, it just seemed like there was no ambiguity. And that's the part that's just so hard for me to understand is, you know, whenever somebody says, you know, observance of the Sabbath is the golden clasp of salvation, or observance of the Sabbath is what unites a believer to God, it's hard for me to read that and think that there's another understanding of that or interpretation of that. Like, it says it right there, or she says that, right? So I would think an Adventist would have to either say, A, she didn't mean that, which how would we know? Because we haven't talked, or B, yes, she means that, but I, as an Adventist, don't necessarily agree with Ellen G. White. But then I don't know Adventist in light, you know, I don't know.
All right, yeah. So I hope y'all caught that. Like, so, you know, it went from, well, let's talk about this, to, well, you hurt my feelings, and, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And, you know, like, well, let's all be friends. And you're wrong because you don't, I don't hold that. And you accuse me. No one, Justin, I'm sorry, bro. We don't care what you believe personally, right? It's not about that. It's never been about that. You know, you can have your version, but when you look at the stuff, right? Does any of this sound different? You know, and let's be fair. Some person could say, you know, oh, that's out of context. We get that a lot. Oh, that's out of context. That's out of context. And I'll say, okay, fine. Let's look at the plethora of writings. Let's look at the plethora of denominational teachings now that we have digital media, Let's look at all the PDFs. Let's look at all the videos and all this kind of stuff. And you tell me, did Alan get this wrong? The answer is no. It's just that simple. Alan did not get the, and he said it's right there. Again, Alan is not stupid. He's a very wise person. He's a smart person. He can look. He understands that he has a very decent command of the English language, and he can break down words on paper and discover meaning. And right, and this is the kind of thing that we're looking at, and people are literally trying to gaslight you and say, well, that's not what I meant. Well, what was it then? Oh, you're just misrepresenting us. I don't have time to argue with you, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, if I'm getting this wrong and my soul is at stake, not that they believe in souls, but that's another story, right? Then why don't you explain this to me, right? And we do not get that. And then so like Renzo had put something on the a question. I don't know if you want to put it on the screen there, BK. So shout out to you, brother. Thanks for listening. And, we may not always agree with everything, but I appreciate your support, bro, for watching this. But yeah, he has a question here. It says, or a statement anyway, you guys should consider having an SDA member on for discussion. It may be the more charitable thing to do. Elsie, have you ever offered to talk with an SDA, either live or off camera? What happened? How did that turn out for you?
Before I left in 2016, I had a meeting with just about every single lecturer and department head at NCU, to no avail. When I did leave and came on national television, it went internationally. Not a single one offered up to help me or want to discuss. I was put on to Ivan Myers. I came to find out why he never really bothered much with me. He heard that I have a different spirit, some whatever. That's his way of saying I have demons, and so he don't want to bother with me. Dr. Martin Hanna from Andrews University, tons of others. Even the Adventist Defense League, I was a part of their group, to no avail. My own local pastor didn't want to talk to me. Leaders, you name it, because they know when you start to discover stuff, you're going to unload, and they know they can't tell you you're just too illiterate, too dumb or too stupid to make sense of things. Because again, I was one of their brightest and sharpest. I was an A student, the conference evangelist. I mean, if I'm that stupid, what does that say about the church to hire me to that position and to have me on big stage preaching and teaching the church's doctrines? And so they're not inviting of that kind of stuff. And so that is why when the situation with Nefer and all of that, they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk to anybody, especially if you're an ex-Adventist and you have a good command of the stuff. That's how they treat you. You get a stiff arm, and they make all kinds of excuses to not engage you. And the one and two who would take up, for example, like Edwin Cotto, and I keep mentioning him a lot because he's a big voice in Adventism, right? He's the leader of the official Adventist Defense League. On 2 occasions, he sought to debate me. Now, this is after like being in his group for a year, 2 years, and these guys couldn't budge me. When I proved to be impenetrable, they started to get very abusive, and I left the group, part my ways with them. Then I started writing and doing videos and all of that, doing my thing. They doing their thing. But as soon as my name comes up in a big situation, he wants some hype, and he wants to embarrass me and that kind of thing. He wants to debate me. When I caught wind of it, I canceled it. This was in March 2020. And then in October with the Nefer situation, he wants to debate me now all of a sudden. Now keep in mind, I done send this guy my books to read and refute, systematic refute, nothing to date. I have tons of videos on YouTube challenging and refuting Adventist doctrines in the South from every angle. No response from them. But as soon as there's a situation he could get a little steam from, he wants to engage me. Nah, bro, you just trying to get a little clout off my name, and it ain't gonna happen. So there's him. But in terms of the general attitude, is that they're not going to engage us. They're not going to sit down and talk. They can keep claiming you're misrepresented, but they will never come and represent it correctly for us to get it right. We invite them, come teach me, educate me so I can stop misrepresented. They're not going to ever do it.
Right.
It's the same cognitive dissonance and that kind of thing. And just one more thing before I shut up. Now, how interesting. Justin is hurt. Oh, he's so hurt and wounded that Alan would come out like that and say the kind of things I was wrong, and say sensational. Yet these are the same cats who consider Alan PARR and those who go to church on Sunday to be pagan Sunday worshippers. These are the same guys who call us the daughters of the whore of Babylon. These are the same guys who say we're going to roast in hell if we don't stop going to church on Sunday, and they have the most nasty things to say to us on various fora and in their evangelistic meetings, and you name it. Again, do a quick Google YouTube search and see how Adventists think of Sunday churches. Shouldn't we be hurt too? But it's okay for them to do it. The mindset is it's okay for them to do it because they have the truth and they are trying to get us into the truth. But anytime we kind of return the favor and we stand up for ourselves and what we believe, oh, you hurt my feelings, you hurt my widow. Just stop it, bro. Yeah, come on, stop it. They would dehumanize us. And as soon as we stand up and throw a punch, you know, like a bully kind of kid, bully you through, and as soon as you throw a punch, and boop, then they cry foul. That's what they do all the time. They do it with me all the time. When I was an Adventist, mashing down the Sunday churches, they championed me, they elevated me. And as soon as I leave and flip the switch now to challenge Adventism in the same zeal and fervor, all of a sudden I'm demon possessed. I have a bad spirit. I have a bad personality, and something is wrong with me, and all of that. It's crazy. But y'all can't have y'all cake and eat it too.
Yeah, I could personally bear witness to CMB trying to get a formal discussion together with a current SDA member. Like, I was in the inbox, and we was trying to figure it out. You know, and how long has that been?
It's been going on 2 months, bro. And here's the thing: it was midnight. I was ready for bed, and this guy said, "You challenge me right now. Let's debate right now." And I was like, "You know what? Okay, fine." And so I said, "I'm gonna go get some coffee, and we're gonna set this thing up, right?" Because I gotta work in the morning. Right?
I offered my channel. I was gonna go live right then and there.
Yeah, and then it was like he backed out. As the guy in the inbox, well, brother, you know, we should set it up and blah blah blah. And okay, like, you know, he wants 2-on-2 debate, and I'm like, it's midnight. Nobody's gonna be up debating with no prep, right? So I'll take you. Let's go. Well, you know, and oh man, I'm not even a debater like that. It's like the thing of it is, it's like if it's that much, right, then okay, fine, let's do it. Okay, I'll sleep tomorrow. That's how.
And then he wanted to be a 2-man with me and CMB. I'm like, well, I'm not a former Adventist, but I know someone that would tag team with CMB. I go get Thunder.
Yes, sir.
I said the wrong thing because I said the wrong thing because, you know.
Yeah.
But listen, guys, this was amazing. Thank you so much for breaking this down. It's just so important that we have people like you who are so entrenched and with the understanding of the doctrine. And again, not doing it with malice. Yeah, we're having a little bit of fun here. This is true, but we're doing this because we want to see people come to salvation in Christ and Christ alone. That is the only reason why we're doing this. So I want to thank you, CMB. I want to thank you, Thunder Lauriston. And final words gotta be real quick because the bodega is coming right after this. So Thunder, the floor is yours for 2 seconds.
Man, I've said a lot. Y'all stick to your Bible and ignore all these prophets and all these weird doctrines that came of late.
Right.
And follow Jesus for yourself. I said a lot already. Thank you, DK, for having us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You wanted me to highlight this one, CMB?
No, I was just saying, like, I wanted to make sure Elsie saw that one because
okay, cool.
The sister like seems to be you
cool.
know, she wants to talk, so that's good. And y'all can set that up. But I mean, I appreciate y'all. Love y'all with the love of Christ, man. I'll see you at the bodega in a few minutes.
That's right. So in closing, it is CMB, EJ Thunder, Lauriston, and BK Apodge signing off. Catch you at bodega. Peace.